I'm Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the last day of Pride Month.
It is. It is. Yes.
So there's that.
The facts.
About a month ago, I received a notice from YouTube that podcasts can now be like synced with YouTube, or how like we record on Spotify and then that gets shut off or jutted off to Apple and wherever else it is, Amazon. Now it can go to YouTube. So our podcast has been on YouTube for like 3 weeks now, I think. And our listenership has doubled. So that's exciting. So welcome to all of the new people who are listening to us right now.
To all this bullshit.
Also, because it's on YouTube, we need to watch our language, especially the F word.
Oh, damn. See, I was wondering about that because...
yeah, all of our podcast episodes on YouTube are demonetized because of because of that. So...
Well, yeah, we swear in every one, don't we?
Yeah, so you need to...
I mean, because
we both need to calm down on that.
Oh, God.
And not using certain language. So... But...
censorship.
There you go. Welcome, new people. Mm-hmm. In better news, Sigourney is going to be in Venice.
Yeah, that was.
And so will you.
Well,
and you know who else is going to be in Venice?
Isabelle Huppert.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isabel's the jury president, which was announced several months ago. But this week, the festival announced they will be giving their Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement to Sigourney Weaver. So that is fantastic. And I'm assuming that her new movie, Dust Bunny, that co-stars, I guess you say his name, Mads Mikkelsen. Is that the correct pronunciation of his name?
It's definitely not Mads.
I know.
Yeah.
But my mind keeps wanting to go to Mads. From the Hannibal creator. I'm assuming that we'll have a screening somewhere there. So that's exciting to me. But you know what? I think because was it this year? Yes, where she was also awarded in Spain. She got a Lifetime Achievement Goya. And Cannes this year decided to give that distinction to Meryl Streep. So thank you, Venice. Thank you for recognizing Sigourney Weaver.
Maybe you'll get to meet her.
I'm sure that request will be. I mean, whatever. It's fine admiring her.
Well, why don't you put it out there? Anyone with strings in Venice, Nick will be there. So try to get him in contact with Sigourney Weaver.
Well, requests will have been made. But yeah, if somebody has another circuitous way, please think of me.
Moving on to another film festival. We went to see a film at the Dances with Films Festival, which was a nice experience because I don't ever agree to do things like that. Mm-hmm. But we received a nice invite, and thankfully we enjoyed the movie. But the movie is called Regarding Us, mm-hmm. Co-written, directed, and starring David Beck, mm-hmm. who's the one who invited us. I did enjoy the movie. We made a review for it, but I think we're going to wait to drop it until we know what distribution's like. But aside from that, I'm mentioning it because I don't think either of us, well, I knew because of this, but you didn't know until we got there that Outfest is no longer in operation.
Well, for right now.
So then I was reading what's going on with Outfest. And the reason we learned that is because the film we watched, Regarding Us, was part of Outfest at Dances with Films.
Yeah, like they were sponsoring its presence there.
So when we received the invite, I was like, oh, that's weird. Why would a film festival be sponsoring a film at another film festival unless that film festival is no longer in existence? And then I knew that Outfest was not happening again until further notice. But I was reading why, and it's because of financial issues. So they had to out of the blue, shut down operations and cancel their big gala event.
Yeah, I was unaware of that, but they're planning on coming back hopefully next year.
But I wonder if part of it is there are bigger festivals that have queer sections, and I mean, if we make a film, Outfest would not be my first thought.
No, but it's still
Outfest wouldn't be my second or third thought. I would think like, oh, well, can we get into TIFF and their like a queer section, or can we get into even Sundance before I would think Outfest?
Well, but to me, like one of the last uh, uh, vestiges of that would be Berlin. But yeah, but I mean, Frameline and Outfest are still important film festivals because they will offer that opportunity when others will not.
Sure, but I think I wonder if it's kind of like how a lot of gay, not gay only, but like how gay bars are struggling because there's more acceptance in other areas. So now that queer cinema's becoming a little more mainstream,
Yeah,
and
it's
they
not.
can,
It's no longer ghettoized.
yeah, that it's like, what do we need? And like, can this festival be filled with projects that are equal parts quality and new? Because it's also like, if they do get bigger titles, they probably already screened at bigger film festivals.
That's almost always,
So
yeah.
then it's like, who wants to go to Outfest if all I'm going to get are movies you probably already had a chance to see in Berlin or Cannes or TIFF, and then, or films that just are not very good. Because
Well,
oftentimes these small festivals, the selections they have are,
yeah, they have to fill out the program. Even TIFF, which has a there are too many films to see. There's a high percentage of bullshit. Yeah.
but anyway, there's that.
I think it's fostering the hunger for that among the youth, though. That it's important that I think we do need queer film festivals. If you look at the state of the world and
Shout out to Janet Jackson
yeah, the 2017 tour, yes.
and the 1989 song from her album. But anyway, go ahead.
But just uh, it's still not okay to be queer out here in most places. So I think that we still need to be seen as a vibrant community. We still need to come together.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think that's not true. I was just wondering why Outfest might have been struggling, and so that's what I came
no,
up
but
with.
I think that you're right. I think that's part of it, and that which is also why gay bars as a queer space also struggle. But I still think I maintain that those are still important, and we still need to uh, support queer spaces, even if there are things that also flourish in them, like certain toxic behaviors. That's a different issue. But I think that yeah, we still need to have places where we can come together and congregate.
Agreed. I guess we have to talk about this since this might be the only time I mention it because I'm sure it's going to be shitty. Is season 2 of Canada versus the World was announced. The cast.
Oh, I already forgot about it.
Yeah, I mean, considering that the current like All Stars 9, which we're currently watching and not talking about, is pretty.
It's very uneventful.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy drag, so I guess
I do too, but
it's fine.
the stakes they're trying to maintain the same level of dramatic stakes, which aren't there.
They're not there because no one can be eliminated and they're playing for charity. But then they're still finding ways to create drama, which just feels so silly.
Well, it feels like Housewives kind of shit.
I mean, probably worse than Housewives
Well, because
because it's like, the name of the game. Every episode, someone has to get cut. Every episode, someone's going to win money. And you're still acting like you didn't know that it's a possibility. But I think the Queens and All Stars 9 are more impressive to me than the Queens announced for Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the World season 2.
I still like some of them a lot,
Well,
but yeah.
I'll name them, and then if you want to say something. So there are 9 queens total. Number 1, in no particular order, Alexis Mateo.
Well, she's always fun to see.
Bam.
Yeah.
And
Sickening, no?
we say several we say several Alexis Mateoisms often. Bam, sickening, no,
And
and
my favorite is Strategy.
strategy. So, and then she's a Vegas queen now, and she
Mhm.
seems like a nice lady.
Yes.
She's not in fighting form. Uh,
No, but she wasn't last time she was on, so
Next, Cheryl Hole, who's so Alexis is obviously US Drag Race. Cheryl Hole is UK.
mhm.
She was on RuPaul's Drag Race UK versus the World, and she got sent off real quick. Um, she I I also recall not being very impressed by her.
She seems nice, but I don't. Yeah,
This is not me fat shaming. I no, because I'm the last person, and I'm not in fighting form either. But I think that it's a it to me it demonstrates how the franchise like WoW presents and how they are just throwing this shit together so quickly because it's just all these all-star seasons. Most of the girls are not in fighting shape. They look like they've been sitting around
Mhm.
and we're waiting for a call, and then they only give them 2-3 weeks, so they just show up, you know, fat and sassy. And it's like, so it's nothing against them. It just shows that versus like a regular season of Drag Race where these are new queens who are anxious to get on. They're, like,
Something to prove.
and when I
Yeah.
say fighting shape, I don't just mean fit because not all queens need to be teeny weeny. I'm saying that when you see like a new season of Drag Race, you can tell that these queens are like active and hungry
They are ready for
despite
their
their age,
they are
like,
ready for their
and despite
close-ups.
their size, they're anxious and ready.
Mhm.
But progressively now, these all-star seasons, these girls really look like who is available and then who
Yes.
do we think will win. Like they already have in their head who's probably going to win.
Mhm.
So I think looking at this roster, it's like, wow, y'all really grabbed the girls who were free and chilling, and they are going to just show up. But number 3, Eureka,
Uh-huh.
who we know from, she was on RuPaul's Drag Race season 9 and then hurt her knee, so had to leave. And then RuPaul invited her back for season 10, and then she made top 3, I believe.
Eureka has done some impressive things.
Well, yeah, because then Eureka did All Stars season 6, and then she was on 2 seasons of We're Here on HBO.
Uh-huh.
She's also done like, she's had a role. I know she was on like a Ryan Murphy production. Like she's had other things.
She's in that terrible RuPaul Netflix series too.
That's right. And then
Yeah.
I think she might have done one of those. Was she in the holiday special? Either way, Eureka seems to be busy. Eureka also got some flack for detransitioning and then becoming, saying she's trans again. But recently she's had facial feminization. I knew I was going to mess that word up.
Astrophysicist.
FFS.
Hmm.
And so yeah, she has a fresh face, fresh top bottom rows of teeth, and she's ready to serve.
Is Eureka who Jasmine Masters was talking about? Where we get her notable line of "just as I thought, trash"? Is that who she was talking about?
Is she? Well, I know that recently Kim Chi told a story
Yeah.
because she had on one podcast said that there was a queen she was on tour with who smelled so bad no one wanted to be around her. And then Eureka said something about Kim Chi. So then Kim Chi went on another podcast and
Ooh.
called out Eureka and said that bitch would ball up her drag and put it in a bag, and that shit would smell like mildew and vinegar, and that she had like an open sore on her belly that she wouldn't get checked out, so she would just wrap it with duct tape. That just sounds awful. Eureka does seem like a nice person.
Yeah.
I've watched some interviews with her, so it's a shame that she's having a hard time. She's also only 33 years old.
Mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But I guess these queens, I mean, even Cheryl Hole's only 30. Like
This drag is hard on the body. Not only the nightlife that is tour that is expected, that's constant and definitive, but also just like accoutrements are hard on women's bodies. Like this, it's hard to be all spackled up all the time.
next is one of my favorite queens, Kennedy Davenport,
Kennedy.
who we know from Drag Race season 7 and All Stars 3. She's 43 years old. She's been doing drag for a long time. She's known as the dancing diva of Texas.
Has still no one told her about these blue contacts?
Listen,
I hate them.
I think that Kennedy transcends all of it. Kind of not unlike Coco Montrese, who just looks crazy to me, but it's like that's her thing.
I don't look like some kind of creature.
I'm not here for it, but especially because Coco Montrese is a Janet Jackson impersonator, and Coco's not. Coco can move, and Janet's not a dancer per se. Like I think you don't have to be like fame level dancer to mimic Janet Jackson. I think you just have to know the choreography. And few people seem to get the intricacies of her choreography right, and that's why they look crazy, including when Sierra did that tribute at the BET Awards. But anyway, Coco doing Janet always makes me kind of like feel bad for both of them. But
God.
anyway, I really like Kennedy Davenport. She did a lip sync back when her season 7 came out, like when they were on tour,
Mm-hmm.
of Gloria Estefan's song On,
Yeah.
O-N, that I watch regularly to this day. Like at least once a month, I'll put it on at the gym.
I think because you watch that so regularly, when I think of Kennedy Davenport, that I hear that song in my head, and I was
Yeah.
just
For
because I was
anyone
just
out
thinking of it
there,
right now.
look up on YouTube Kennedy Davenport, Gloria Estefan on. It's, I mean, it's just so, because the beauty of it is like she is obviously a fabulous dancer and performer, but she, her dancing is very specific, and so choosing songs that work for her, and for this song to work so well for her, because you wouldn't think that this song by Gloria Estefan would be
Right.
like the song that Kennedy Davenport would go off on, but it's beautiful. I'm anxious to see her because she's so slow and delayed
Mm-hmm.
and has an
Except
attitude.
for when she got rid of milk.
Right.
No delay there.
Milk.
Milk.
Um, Next is someone I don't recognize, La Kehana from Drag Race France.
Well, it's because we didn't watch but one episode of that. But yeah.
But in the promo look, her wig looks like her bang section. They just lifted it up and cut it. And so
Yeah.
it's sticking straight up like something about Mary. Another queen I did not recognize is Le Phil from Drag Race UK season 4, which we watched.
I remember her. I think if you looked her up out of drag, maybe you'd remember her. I don't know.
Man, if you paid me, I couldn't remember this lady.
Oh.
But she had a lot of energy in the promo, so good
Yeah.
for her. This queen I do recognize, Lemon. She's from Canada's Drag Race season 1 and then UK versus the World season 1.
I mean,
she had a little bit of an attitude.
Perfect name. She always seems sour. I don't know.
She did seem sour.
But sour in that curdled way, not in that tangy, add some non-caloric flavor way.
Then we have another queen who I do recognize and did not like. Her name is Miss Fergalicious, or Fergalicious. That's not her name. I'm sorry. Her name is Miss Fiercelicious, and she's from Canada's Drag Race season 3. She is stunning in and out of drag.
Oh yeah, but
that attitude is, even her tagline in the promo says, "There has never been a queen like me on Canada's Drag Race, Canada versus the world," which is a crazy statement to make because there's only been one previous season.
Yeah, girl.
She goes, she says, "I'm not like the other girls, I'm worse." And I just think like, wow, what a way to sell yourself. To just be a bitch.
Very beautiful, but I
guess that's her brand, because she was on, there's that show, The Traders. They have a Canada version and she was on that. So I guess if that's how she wants to sell herself. But then you think, who else is on? I think it's Candy Muse is on a show called The Villains or something. And I think at least Candy Muse can be likable.
Mm-hmm.
But this lady right here,
I don't like it. But it, what it also, it's kind of like that because Canadians are known for being nice, and it's like Minnesotans are. And I grew up in northern Minnesota. Those fucking people aren't. Sorry, God damn it, I can't swear. Those people aren't nice.
Demonetized already. Dang. And then lastly, Tynomi Banks from Canada's Drag Race season 1. I don't remember her.
I remember Tynomi. I think you've actually seen her MC somewhere in Toronto because she was a regular for years on their little strip.
I liked her in the promo. I liked her attitude and I liked her look. She's wearing like one of those muscle bodysuits because the theme for the promo is like WWE or fabulous, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling.
Anyway. Ruined by Pia Zadora.
Lastly, in this section, I wanted to talk about Paramount just removed or wiped out all of the MTV News archives from the internet. So we know MTV News ended a while ago, but of course the archives were still intact. So when I saw that, I had a reaction to it because I have a lot of memories of being a teenager and in college, and when I first had access to the internet, and I remember going back and looking at like MTV News articles and But then I was reading because a lot of people had a lot to say about it, including a lot of contributors, and this idea of wiping out these archives because I mean, it's wiping out like 25 years of like pop culture, music history that like I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems like a big deal. Like maybe the government should house these archives, not unlike how we protect historical structures.
In museums, yeah.
And like maybe there should be like the government should back up. So if all of a sudden Rolling Stone goes out of business, that someone can have access to that because it's a part of history, but also all the contributors now have lost.
Well, again, that's a case in point. That's what libraries were for, right? That there would be a copy of these things stored indefinitely
Sure.
somewhere. But it is
But with
just
digital
the
media,
digital media. Well, it's just lots of people, not lots of people, but I often uh, get kind of strange reactions because I still have a physical media library, and not because I'm afraid of the government. It's just like these people, they can take this shit down whenever they want. But if I have my hot little copy in my hand, it is mine.
that's why I'm surrounded by films because you want a hot little copy in your hand.
Well,
No, it makes sense. I mean, if you want something,
yeah, that's how I grew
you
up
don't want to
though.
be at the mercy of whatever.
Others at
You
all.
know, I mean, that's how I felt about my music library. I had thousands of CDs that I remember the summer before I moved to before the summer I moved to Minnesota. Um, I remember my ex who I'd moved to Minnesota for telling me like you can't bring all these that you can't have all these CDs you need. And he had also had a huge his
He
my
told you you couldn't bring your shit?
well because he had if I had like 5,000 CDs, he had 50,000. So he actually paid someone to burn them all to his back then you had to burn it directly to your iMac, and of course with that many CDs it was an external hard drive. So he had paid someone to do it. So he was like you just can't carry around all these CDs like which I agreed with that like it doesn't make sense if there's a way to have access to it all on one device, which back then because I had the very first iPod, it couldn't hold all of the songs, so I had
Mhm.
to curate a list of like I think it was like 500 songs to put on there. Anyway,
That's very Fahrenheit 451.
I definitely felt like that was a very hard decision to make, to
Yeah.
say I'm going to throw away these discs that I took so much joy in procuring. Every Tuesday I would go to the Virgin Megastore at the farm shops at midnight. They would stay open late because that's when new music would premiere. And then there was a used CD store next to UNLV, which is where I went to college. And I would have so much fun going and finding stuff that maybe I couldn't afford back when I was a teenager, and now it's
Mhm.
on sale for 99 cents. So yeah, now I really think that's why my relationship with music has changed so much, is because I just don't because I don't get to hold it in my hand and look at it. It doesn't feel special
It's
to
not
me.
tangible,
So then
yeah.
I don't look for new music.
Mhm.
If I happen to hear something, which is usually
In a
in
movie.
a movie, or if I'm sitting at like a restaurant and I hear something, then that might spark. And honestly, usually it's an older song. It's very, if you look at my playlist, there aren't a lot of new songs on there. But anyway, I was sad for MTV News being wiped, I'm hoping that something happens to archive those in a space that is secure for in perpetuity. Moving on to the restaurant section, because we've been at the Chinese theater a few times
Uh-huh.
recently. We've eaten at 25 Degrees, which is that restaurant at the Roosevelt,
Yes.
which is okay.
Very overpriced, but
It's very
yes.
overpriced, but
Mhm.
the restaurant itself is nice.
Yeah, limited, I mean, they're
Selection.
probably best known for their shakes,
I
which we
think
never get.
no, which we never get, but I think it's you know like all these touristy areas. There are just very few places to eat that are good and or reasonably priced.
Yeah.
And in the case of Hollywood and Highland, the scenario is usually that they're neither reasonably priced or good.
Mhm.
Although we did discover a little Mexican restaurant that's new in the food court of the mall at Hollywood and Highland.
Yeah, there's a couple selections because for a long time there was The only thing I can remember was that poke place. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there are some options that are popping up that are better options, but 25 degrees, it's you can tell that there are a lot of like people who are in town like working, like entertainment type stuff who are usually sitting there.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I guess that's cool. Anyway, there's something in the sorry to this man section, which is more of a clarification because
Oh yeah, I forgot
for
about
the
this.
review of A Quiet Place Day 1, you had said that you wonder if Lupita Nyong'o is the first Black woman to lead a Hollywood film since Octavia Spencer and Ma,
I said Hollywood genre film,
a
I believe.
Hollywood genre film. But
Uh-huh.
what you were trying to say is uh, a studio genre film, because then we got all these comments and messages about all the Black women who've been in movies since 2019. But what he means by Hollywood or studio film is like something that was produced by a major studio.
And
Because a lot of the films y'all are talking about were made independently and then sold.
yes, and
So
outfitted for that woman. I mean, and if you look at what Ma and Quiet Place Day One. Okay, so Barbarian is a film I loved, and Georgina Campbell like became notable because of that film. But that was not Warner Brothers, that was not Paramount making this film with this star attached as the lead. She's also not the lead; she's a co-star. So if you want to get down in the weeds with me, but yeah, I think that I think I haven't looked at it beyond those comments, but I think Lupita is the first Black woman. Notably, both her and Octavia are Oscar winners, but I don't know. If you think of it in those terms, it's pretty sparse.
what did Lupita win an Oscar for?
12 Years a Slave, her debut.
Oh,
You've never seen that.
no.
I still remember the moment watching that being like, who is this woman?
Yeah, that's a hard one for I feel like that's gonna be a hard one for me to
Yeah, it's not.
ultimately watch.
It's like all those slave movies. It's a hard watch, but that's worth seeing.
We need to take a break. Films released we didn't cover. Daddy-O.
I did watch this. It is interesting. I think this premiered at TIFF last year, but it stars Dakota Johnson, who's not my favorite, and Sean Penn, who's also not my favorite. But I think he's an idiot as a person, but I think as a screen presence, he's a little more interesting looking with age. And this was a character that I think he was pretty good for. It's the directorial debut of Christy Hall, and it's about a woman who gets lands at JFK and gets a taxi, and the entire film is set within this taxi as this driver and passenger bond.
The Devil's Bath.
I was hoping you would agree to watch this because I loved this film, but you didn't. It's the latest film from Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala, who are best known for their first film, Goodnight Mommy, which I liked, which was remade terribly with Naomi Watts. Franz is also married to Ulrich Seidel, but it stars this actress who I think is reminded me of a young Beatrice Dahl, Anya Plaschk, who's also a singer who has kind of like moody goth electronic music, and it is set in 18th century Austria, and uh, a, it's about women. So is that because these peasant women had these miserable lives and were looking for loopholes not to go to hell. So they would commit crimes so they could be sentenced to death and then be allowed to ask for forgiveness before they're killed. It is very dark, but I highly recommended film.
June Zero.
Uh, Goop's brother Jake Paltrow directed this. You had asked me about this a couple months ago, but I think it's about the Eichmann trial, but we did not watch it.
Reunion.
You had wanted to see this,
Uh,
but
I need,
Lionsgate was not offering screeners.
I need to verify that. Hold on.
It's with Lil Rel,
Little Rel.
and you're the Billy Magnuson, your friend.
Oh, my friend's in it. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, so they rejected us.
Well,
Oh, you know who else is in it? Chase Crawford.
Mm-hmm. It's directed by Chris Nelson, who did a movie called Ass Backwards about a decade ago with June Diane Raphael that I hated.
Oh,
I hated that movie. I saw it at Sundance, and that was my introduction to her. And I really liked June, but I hated that movie.
did you hate that movie?
I can't say the F word.
The Vortilac.
We almost watched this. I reviewed this out of Venice last year. I think it was in the Venice days. There were a lot of vampire films in Venice last year. But this is, I believe, is a debut or a second film. Adrian Bowe is the director. It stars Casey Motet Klein and Ariane Lebed, who's best known for Yorgos Lanthimos' great early works. I believe is also his wife. She directed a movie that was just a can too. This is a period vampire film that has some practical effects that I thought were fantastic and goofy, and I really liked it.
Well, that's nice to hear. Projects of interest. The richest woman in the world.
Terry Khalifa, who's worked with Catherine Deneuve a few times, at least twice, and I haven't seen those films, is working on a film, I believe that's in production now, starring Isabelle Huppert as Lillian Bettencourt. And I don't know the whole scandal about Bettencourt, but I believe it was something to do with a man that was taking advantage of her and her fortune. I think there's also a Netflix series about Bettencourt. Anyway, it also stars Marina Foy and Laurent Lafitte, both people I quite like to see in film. So that's exciting to me.
To the victory.
Valentin Vasyanovich, Ukrainian filmmaker, whose first two films, I think are impressive. Atlantis and Reflection. He's working on a new project. I think it's just collecting funding, so it'd probably be a while.
Lastly, yes.
Nadav Lapid, who won Berlin with Synonyms, and Ahed's Knee. I also liked his last film at Cannes, which won an award. He has a new project. I'm willing to bet this will get a title change. It reminds me that Kinds of Kindness, the working title for that film was No. And this is yes.
Unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section. First, Martin Mull.
Yeah.
I recognize him, and I can't pinpoint from what, but I definitely know who this person is.
Well, you aren't a fan of Clue.
Oh, is he a teacher in Clue?
He's Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard. Oh, I don't even. Have I seen Clue?
You have.
I thought you were talking about Clueless. That's why I said, was he a teacher? I see that he's in My Bodyguard, which I do know that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in some TV shows I've heard of.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I never watched Arrested Development or 2.5 Men. I did watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I don't remember. Oh, Roseanne. Yeah. I probably recognize him from Roseanne.
Yeah, he's a notable character actor, but I mean, a large resume.
Well, he died at the age of 80.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bill Cobbs died.
Yeah.
And I for sure know Bill Cobbs as Rachel Marin's manager in the film The Bodyguard. But his career is greater than that.
For sure. I almost put on last night. Oh, you know who he's great in and I love is The People Under the Stairs. But I almost put on, but you weren't feeling the best and went to bed.
I'm mentally ill.
He's a co-star in Enough, starring J-Lo, which I haven't seen since it came out. So I almost put that on last night.
He won an Emmy. A Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Limited Performance in a Daytime Program.
And what was that program?
The program was called Dino Dana.
Is that for children? It sounds like it.
I think it is.
Yes, it's for children. So,
well,
I mean, out of all his films, I mean, that is, it is what it is. But yes, he is a very beloved and recognizable face.
Beloved. We need to take another break. This week's secret film was your choice, and you chose the 1982 English language art house film, Querelle, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder.
Yes, and just in time for the last day, it's the last day of Pride Month. It was the last film of a very distinguished, important career before he died unexpectedly. Yeah.
What is Querelle about? A handsome sailor is drawn into a vortex of sibling rivalry, murder, and explosive sexuality. I call that premise fake news. I don't think this is explosive sexuality. It's not that thrilling, but it's beautifully shot.
So my relationship to this film, it was I rented it my freshman year of college, and I did so because I was familiar with the star Brad Davis because of the film Midnight Express. And I remember thinking he was very handsome. And there's some gay stuff that happened. There's a gay scene with him and John Hurt in in Midnight Express. And I knew this was a queer film, but I did not know who Fassbinder was. And I so this is was my introduction to him, and I remember feeling quite flabbergasted about what the hell I just watched. Um, and over the years, I've come to quite love Fassbinder and understand uh, some of the things that are kind of really off-putting about his approach to filmmaking sometimes. But he directed 40 some films, including one of the longest films ever made, Berlin Alexanderplatz, was like 15 hours, and died in his early 40s. And what he looked like in the early 80s, it's no surprise. But yeah.
My relationship to this film is that for the past 16 years, I've lived in a space where there's a poster of this film hanging in some wall in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And the poster is a man, like a sailor, against a phallic structure. So, that's all I knew about the film. And every now and then, if someone saw the poster, they would say, like, oh, I like that poster, or like they know that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched it, y'all. What is it about? So Brad Davis plays Querelle, who's a sailor, and he's on a boat, and the boat stops at a port called Brest. And at Brest, there's a bar called Feria, and Feria is owned by a lady named Lycian.
Mm-hmm. Played by the great Jean Moreau.
So Lycian has a husband named Nono.
Mm-hmm. Played by Gunther Kaufman, a Fassbinder regular.
He runs the bar, but she also has a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. Robert, played by Hanno Poschel.
So her husband runs the bar, and then her boyfriend just hangs out and dances with her all day.
Yep.
But
pretty good gig.
Oh, that's what you want?
No, but it sounds really boring, and it sounds like it would lead to self-destruction.
Interesting. Anyway, so Querelle shows up to the port, goes to the bar, and we find out that he is saying that he and Robert are brothers.
Mm-hmm.
He also takes a liking to Lycian and wants to have sex with her. But she and her husband have a deal that any man who wants to have sex with her has to play a game of dice with him. And if you win the game, you get to have sex with her. But if you lose the game, he gets to sodomize you. Querelle loses the game and gets sodomized by Nono. But they decide to...
It's implied that he wanted that.
But then it's implied that... I think there are a lot of symbols and metaphors. I think one of the metaphors is that this character is struggling with his own sexuality.
Oh,
but
for sure.
Anyway, Querelle and Nono, after they engage in sexual activities, they enter a deal to buy and sell drugs. So Querelle is offering to sell Nono drugs. So he goes to get drugs from someone, and that person makes a sexual advance at him, another man, and Querelle kills that man. So now he's a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to figure out what to do. Well, there's another guy at the port named Gilles,
mm-hmm.
who's
also played by him,
who's played by the same actor who's playing Robert,
Hanno,
his supposed brother. I'm saying supposed because I just ruined it because we find out it's not really his brother. But anyway, that poor Gilles, Querelle decides that what he's going to do, because it's in the newspapers that guy, Gilles, has killed someone as well. So Querelle gets the bright idea to pin this shit on Gilles. We don't learn this till the end, so I'm spoiling it. But Querelle seduces Gilles, makes him fall in love with him over the course of like 3 minutes, and says, I know how you can get some money so that you can escape. You're going to rob my boss, who's like the captain of the boat, because he always has a bunch of money on his ass. So Gilles robs him, takes the money. Querelle gives him a change of clothes, and says, okay, well, good luck. Maybe I'll see you in the next life.
Mm-hmm.
And then what does Querelle's ass do? Immediately go tell someone like, oh, I know who robbed the captain. He's going to be over here at 4:30. Go get his ass. And they do. So now Querelle's off the hook. So the end of the film is he's back at that Feria bar and he has sex with Lycian.
Mm-hmm.
But then he reveals to her that he really only did it to get back at
Robert.
his brother. And then we find out via the birth certificate that Querelle's not even Robert's brother. So of course there's more to read into that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have to. So I don't know Werner Rainer Fassbender's work.
You do though.
What have I seen of his?
Well, because one of my top 10 favorite films of all time that I made you watch was The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
Oh, okay. So I do know that movie, but and I know that this movie is based on a book
that I'm reading that was published in 1947 and is really a kind of a riff on one of the classic queer texts, which is Melville's Billy Budd.
Immediately when the movie started playing, I said, I don't like this style of like direction. I don't like this acting. And you said, well, this is sort of his thing. Yeah. So overwhelmingly, because I'm sure people love this movie and are not going to agree with me, it just isn't for me. I don't like this style in this movie. Maybe a different story would have worked. But it's what's intriguing to me is talking about the film.
Sure.
And I think within the film, we get a lot of the source material from the book, which is written by
Jean Genet. Who, and it's interesting, I think, that you watched this after Poison, Todd Haynes' debut. The last film of this filmmaker and the first film of that filmmaker that are doing similar things.
Genet's text is sort of interwoven into Querelle, and I found that intriguing. And I haven't read the book, but I get a sense that the book probably translates better.
No, the book is more of like a fever dream, a stream of consciousness with overlapping characters that are kind of grounded a little bit by the Franco Nero character, Lieutenant Seblon.
Well, so that kind of makes sense to me because we were talking about this earlier, and I think maybe my aversion to this film in particular is this. I think a lot of queer filmmakers make films that are like great part fantasy for them. And I think maybe as time goes on, I'm becoming less receptive to other people's fantasies. Like, because I think I've spent the last 27 years having to hear about everyone else's like just the constant bombardment of in a way that just doesn't even. It's very fascinating in my mind to think and talk about of like, and then also like seeing Werner, like looking him up and how he lived and how he looked and how he died. And it just seems like this movie feels very personal, like someone's own fantasy. But the way it plays out is just like, I don't know, like it's not seductive. It's not sexy at all. I mean, maybe for 1982, seeing men grab each other's crotches was more groundbreaking.
Well, they're doing more than that in this film. I think some of the stuff that we're seeing in here would not even be attempted now from a major queer auteur. I think there's a lot. Well, I think there's a lot.
Don't say it. Well, we have to be careful how you say things.
I think there's a lot that's very brazen about this film. Like this is a queer ass movie, and that's what I really appreciate about it.
I think it's queer in the sense that you have the captain of the boat is in love with Querelle, and he's just straight up saying like, I love that man, he's so sexy. So I will say that to me, like it was kind of shocking, like, oh, I wasn't expecting some things to be so overt, but I think,
well, and the fact that it's Franco Nero doing that.
Well, I don't know those references, so then I'll just trust that that's what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know that.
I mean, he's a major Italian star and is still with Vanessa Redgrave.
But, okay, I didn't know that, but the actual sexuality is not that. I mean, there's no nudity. They're simulating sodomy in two scenes.
But there's a bluntness which is apparent in most of Fassbender's work that is kind of unprecedented with queer movies, especially then.
I think that's interesting. That I can see like scholars, like literary and cinema scholars, calling it would you call it, bluntness,
Mm-hmm.
which I would agree with, but it also reads as like bad acting, right? I mean, if 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 you just take a casual pass at this film, it's like, ooh, this shit is crunchy as hell.
Sure, but you have to, which is kind of what Lanthimos does now too.
But I
With
wouldn't dismiss this
but
film as being bad and crunchy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that a person could, but I think if you really want to be more elevated about the whole discussion, then you would call it blunt. And I do think that there is a function to that. Like,
there's a it's tapping into this artificiality in a purposeful way, like the set design, which I think is fantastic, and also it Fassbender was riffing off Bertolt Brecht, and that was all about what Brecht's theater was about.
I'm not qualified to talk about this movie in a real way, except just like my overall impression was that it's beautiful to look at.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that you have to be to talk about the film. I
I
think,
think in 1982, I'm sure this felt like bold and brazen because, like you said, it is very gay. Like
well,
it's very gay.
and Brad Davis was notable. I think this was he who died of AIDS, and I think his wife wrote something about him posthumously that maybe confirmed his sexuality. But
Oh, I thought his wife said that he got it from like IV drug
yeah,
use.
because watching him in Midnight Express, which was the film that was allowed to be seen in my household, it was always, that's Brad Davis. He died of AIDS, but he got it the good way. He got it from drugs. is how AIDS was always kind of sold back then. I think it's interesting to note that Fassbinder dedicated this film to his friend El Hedi Ben Salim, who was in a lot of his films, most notably Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, who, like a lot of the people who starred in his films, had sexual relationships with Fassbinder, but or he wanted to have them with him. But I think that's interesting that this film, he's, to me, he's almost positioning himself as like the Franco Nero character.
The symbolism, so what did I like? The way the film looks, the set design.
Same set designers, Cabaret. Mm-hmm.
I think it's I think it's funny that like these are professional actors who are directed to act in sort of this very like flat way,
Mm-hmm.
which did not speak to me.
Well,
But then I think the film's saying a lot, and
the
that's the strength of it.
the song that Jean Moreau sings, and this was one of my first introductions to her.
Oh God, she keeps saying, "Each man kills the thing he loves,"
Which is taken. I want
each man kills the thing he loves. Da da da.
was nominated. That song was nominated for a Razzie.
That shit drove me crazy.
It did. And again, like when I first saw it, I was kind of repelled by her and the song. But I've since come to love it. The lyrics are taken from a poem by Oscar Wilde, which takes it back to the queer OG after he was released from jail. But and then there's a verse I want to read from that at the closing of this podcast. But I've come to really like kind of this kitschiness of it. And I want to share a quote. I was rereading Susan Sontag's notes on camp, and she writes, "Thus, things are campy not when they become old, but when we become less involved in them and can enjoy instead of be frustrated by the failure of the attempt. What was banal can, with the passage of time, become fantastic. And we are better able to enjoy a fantasy as fantasy when it is not our own." And I think that as I've aged, I've come to really appreciate about Querelle.
Well, speaking about that, so some of the themes, I think, like repression and how that manifests.
Mm-hmm.
So in this instance, Querelle,
Well, there's a
who,
lot of mirrors. Like Jean Moreau is speaking almost exclusively through speaking to a mirror as she's looking at her object of affection. And there's a lot of doppelganger effects going on with the actor that's playing Robert and Gilles, but as well as another character that Gilles is in love with. What's his name? Roger? Because he keeps Roger Bataille.
he keeps trying to mask his feelings for him by saying, "You look like your sister. And if you were your sister, these are the things I would do. If I was your woman, the things I do to you, but I'm not, so I can't." I won't.
That basically, yeah.
Well, so then this makes me feel like getting back to how I think I'm like watching other people's fantasies sometimes becomes tedious because it's like I hear and know and talk to so many gay men who have the how do I say this without getting nasty messages? I think it's like there's this like pervasive or pernicious infection amongst gay men of like fantasizing about things that are not available to you. So
Hmm.
you know or see or talk to so many gay men who are not like they're regular, average, but then they fantasize about these people who would never be an option for them.
Hmm.
And then there's like this entire narrative and all these feelings that are built around it. But then these filmmakers, all these queer films you watch and all these they're always like these super hot guys.
Yeah, there's a degree of they have access because of their
And I kind of
career.
feel like I wish I almost, I don't know. It's almost like because if Fassbender is the, like, let's say he's the captain of the captain of the boat is a handsome man. So seeing this man long after another man who's attractive is a very different vibe than if the captain of the boat looked like Fassbender.
Right.
And then, so I think that, so like kind of the opposite of what you just said is I think as I get older, it's just becoming a little more like this. It just feels like this is why people have so many issues with like self-worth and being fulfilled because they're chasing something that may not even be available to them or that, who are you to it, it's like wanting it's almost like wanting to control someone, like own someone or something or a feeling, because even the sex acts in this film um just feel, and I think just dealing with specifically gay men and sexuality, everything is so like specific and planned and precise.
Performative.
And
Hmm.
I think it just, as I get older, it just becomes, it's just very unattractive and boring. And I think maybe bringing my own baggage into this film, I found this boring. Like, because it is so blunt. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, so a bunch of, I mean, I didn't think that there were any exceptionally attractive people in this movie because if you take away their bodies, these faces are cracked. But
You don't think Franco Nero is attractive?
Franco Nero is probably the one I found the most attractive. I don't think Carell's body is very nice, but I mean, I'm assuming. I mean, he probably smokes a lot and does drugs because he can't be that old, and his face looked like he looked like a 50-year-old man to me
Uh-huh.
with a 28-year-old body. But I'm not trying to drag these people. I'm just saying that I think it just feels like it's pretty to look at with men who were supposed to assign this sort of standard of beauty to, and then they're being very blunt about their feelings, which I think in itself is meaningful. Like
Hmm.
what this film to me is powerful in not what it's like. I don't think it's fabulous filmmaking. I think what the film represents is its power.
Yeah.
That like this filmmaker's like the end product and what it says about this individual sexuality and maybe sexuality at the time that this film was made. And
Well, the essay for the Criterion, the new Criterion restoration from Nathan Lee, is comparing it to cruising. It's kind of these time capsules before the cataclysm, as he says, when the AIDS crisis hit, and the methods with which we're starting to be able to consume queer narratives dissipated and really have not come back like this since then.
hmm, I
I also think that he would respond to some of what he writes in his essay because he says Querelle is not a movie one falls into. It is a weird object one confronts at a distance. On Davis, his character may lend the movie its name, but the movie itself has no center, no real protagonist, no essential drama.
hmm, yeah, I this film has value, uh, and I could talk a lot more about it.
Notably, this premiered at the Venice Film Festival, where it didn't win any awards. I think a knowing title that Wim Wenders won that festival for a film called The State of Things, which kind of ironically says some things. But the jury president, Marcel Carnet, who has directed, if you've never seen Les Enfants du Paradis, The Children of Paradise, highly recommended from the 40s, but among many other films, he recused himself as the jury president and he made a statement. He said, while being president of the jury, I would love to express my disappointment in not having been able to convince my colleagues to place R.W. Fassbinder's Querelle among the winners. As a matter of fact, I found myself alone in defending the movie. Nevertheless, I keep on thinking that, although controversial, R.W. Fassbinder's final movie, Want It or Not, Love It or Hate It, will one day find its place in the history of cinema.
Yeah, yeah. It again, I don't want to ramble on because we only have like 9 minutes left, but I think, yeah, it the strength in this movie really is what it represents to me, like within a community and within a time and this person and how they probably felt about themselves and the things they lust after and
Yeah.
the longing they have. And so there's a lot of power in that. And I think like related to people's mental health and feeling less than and perpetuating these, I don't know, it just visual representations like this sometimes make me sad, or like watching these bad gay movies where it's always these like hunky guys and these stupid scenarios, and then you see the filmmaker and it's like, oh, you probably just wanted to make a movie so you could get a bunch of hot shirtless guys in a room
And they'll do it. Yeah.
and they'll do it.
Mhm.
And it just I mean, it's like this is why there's so much dysfunction in some groups with some people, because they long for something that,
Well, it's misplaced. Like, why is this what we're longing for? Like, what is this really? And if you have, I think that's the despair about if you have access to exploring your fantasy and realizing like this is it, and there was nothing there worth all of this time and energy.
you know, I may maybe also it's like it because it doesn't feel real, which is deliberate.
Hmm.
Like maybe I don't connect with that, or like that's becoming less and less appealing to me, like as time goes on and I feel more like normal as a person.
Hmm.
I don't need to be taken to a fantasy place.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not the film's fault or the filmmaker's fault. It's just, looking like what you just read. I think looking at it with some distance and time, it it maybe representations like this aren't as necessary today, but which is why maybe something like I feel like I'm going to talk about this movie forever because people really hated what I had to say about it, but Red, White, and Royal Blue
Well,
is
yeah, I didn't
like
like that.
there those movies can be made. I'm not saying they can't, but it just doesn't, for someone like me, it just feels like it
That
it's
movie.
like eating a Twizzler.
Well, yeah, it's not real food, it's not real sustenance, and I'm not saying Carell by comparison is real sustenance, but something like Carell from a queer filmmaker written by a queer man has some authenticity about what these interactions can look like.
Well, but this movie was what, 40 years ago.
Hmm.
So then you think 40 years from now, maybe someone would look at something like Red, White, and Royal Blue and think, oh, that may not be the best made film, but it is a snapshot of the culture at that time. Like there was,
You know
I
what?
mean, the fact that you could have two sort of, you know, th- I mean, I guess you could call them like the like dignitaries in like like a very public relationship, and it be so flowery, and that is a marker for what the culture was like at that time. That's what Corel is for this time period.
I think like something like Red, White, and Royal Blue, it's gonna be like how we talk about sanitized women's pictures of the '50s, where it's none of this is realistic. It's all fantasy that
But
people
it
will
has
have.
value in that way,
Sure, yeah,
like as a landmark, I guess, or a marker.
yes, like as a litmus test for to what was the atmosphere like?
I only wrote down one note for this movie, and it was that who's narrating it?
Uh, Nero's character, the lieutenant.
That person sounded like Anthony Jeselnik to me. That's all I could think of when he was talking.
That
He's
might
like,
not because everybody was overdubbed in this
oh
movie.
yeah, but it definitely sounded like Anthony Jeselnik. And then we watched the Criterion,
Hmm.
and the cover art is new, and it's really striking. And I think that it would be interesting to remake this film and remake it in a graphic way where all the men do look like that, because the artwork on the Criterion is, the film
It's
looks
very
like Tom of
Tom
Finland,
of Finland, yeah.
and I think it would be fun to redo it and have these. men either digitally or through prosthetics altered to look like that,
Yeah.
with better acting, I think that it could be really interesting to remake.
I think, well, Fassbender wasn't the first choice to make. I think it was Werner Schrader, who was also a peer of Fassbender's, but was kind of the obscure art house uh, guy from the very queer, also from the New German Wave. So Fassbender was actually in kind of an internationally known filmmaker, so he was able to pull this together. But yeah, I think there would be worth in revisiting Querelle today from somebody else.
Well, what would you
Excuse me.
what would you give Carell?
3.5.
I think I
Speak
would
your
give
truth.
it 2.5 out of 5, just
Okay.
because I'm in the middle.
Okay.
But
That's
if a
fine.
person hasn't seen it, it's worth watching. Uh,
It's too bad Fassbender had his health issues, because seeing him, what he would have done, and or the films he would have made through the AIDS crisis, I think I
oh,
can only
sure.
imagine.
I
Oh,
would consider if there's like a screening at a theater, like watching on a big screen,
yeah, I've
because I did
never.
think it was really beautiful.
Yeah, I love how it looks.
What do we have going?
I wanted to read a passage from
Okay,
the
we only have seconds left, so go ahead.
oh. Yet each man kills the thing he loves, by each let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. Some kill their love when they are young, and some when they are old. Some strangle with the hands of lust, some with the hands of gold. The kindest use a knife, because the dead so soon grow cold. Some love too little, some too long, some sell and others buy. Some do the deed with many tears, and some without a sigh. For each man kills the thing he loves, yet each man does not die. Little
Mm,
Oscar Wilde for you.
that was a quality moment.
Mhm.
Ta ta.